answer to 1984 is 1776. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
We are live on The Alex Jones Show. It is Wednesday, the 19th of April here in Austin, Texas. Another jam-packed show. 3 guests, no less than 3 guests today. We have Roger Stone coming up at the bottom of the hour to talk all things Trump. We have Mike Cernovich coming up in the second hour to break more exclusive stories from his perspective. Obviously, he's been taking on the mainstream media and beating them at their own game, so that's going to be exciting. And then in the third hour, Andrew Torba, the founder of Gab. This is the new alternative to Twitter. People have been asking for a new social network to take them on. He's done it, he's created it, he's set it up, and he is in studio in the third hour. So absolutely action-packed show. Ton of news to cover as well. We have an MSNBC analyst, and this is one of the top stories up on Infowars.com, an MSNBC analyst calling for ISIS to bomb a Trump property in Turkey. Now, I've talked before about how the far left, at least in terms of their rhetoric, I'm not saying they're all going to go off to Syria and fight for ISIS, but in terms of their rhetoric, they're merging with jihadists. They're spouting the same rhetoric, and don't forget, ISIS in their own manifesto, we reported on this about a year ago, put out that the left, the far left, and jihadists broadly share the same goal, and that they would try to recruit the far left towards their ideology. What have we seen in the months since? We've seen feminists chanting Allah Akbar at their big protest, their anti-Trump protest. We've seen top prominent journalists tweeting, calling for Trump's assassination on Twitter directly over and over again. Now we have an MSNBC analyst nominates Trump property for next ISIS bombing. Don't forget, I talked about on Monday, the New York Times is encouraging Trump to leave ISIS alone in Syria, to even support them to some extent. This is coalescing around a very chilling rhetorical alliance between jihadists and the far left. An MSNBC counter-terrorism analyst is under fire after suggesting that ISIS should bomb a property belonging to US President Donald Trump. Malcolm Nance, who regularly appears on MSNBC programming, and he's got history, which we'll go through in a minute, took to Twitter Tuesday and expressed hope that Islamic State terrorists would bomb the president's property in Turkey. He actually said it in a tweet. Quote, "This is my nominee for the first ISIS suicide bombing of a Trump property," Nance tweeted in response to a picture of Trump Tower building in Istanbul. He deleted the tweet, but the internet doesn't forget. Now, this guy is a counter-terror analyst. Let's not forget that. Counter-terror. But he has a history of denying that ISIS-inspired attacks have anything to do with Islam. When an extremist plowed a truck into innocent people in Nice, France last year, after reading ISIS materials advocating such forms of attack, Nance suggested the driver was just mentally unstable rather than following any ideology. He described the attack as the driver taking, quote, "a moment to challenge society in a horrific way." Now imagine if you were the parents of what? One of those 10 children killed in that Nice attack? An Islamist barreling a truck, dismantling people limb from limb. You've lost your child, and this guy gets up on MSNBC and says that the culprit, the terrorist, was just challenging society. Again, this is the merger of rhetorical violence between the far left and the ISIS jihadists. They're legitimizing the grievances because, again, they broadly share the same grievances if you drill down into it, based in their hatred of the West, their hatred of America. Now he's actually tweeting, encouraging ISIS to bomb a Trump building, and it gets even worse than that, as we saw what happened in Fresno yesterday. We will get on to talk about it on the Alex Jones Show Live. You also have PBS encouraging kids to be taught about suicide bombings. PBS, absolutely shocking alliance of the far left and Islam. We'll be back on the Alex Jones Show Live. Don't go away. So we have an MSNBC counter-terror analyst getting up on Twitter and encouraging ISIS to attack Trump's building in Istanbul, Turkey. Shocking in isolation, but not given the history of the far left aligning itself with Islamist rhetoric. Gateway Pundit also reports today on a related subject. Your tax dollars at work. PBS teaches kids about the glory of Islamic suicide bombings. PBS is running a series of lesson plans that glorify Islamic suicide bombings. It's called Dying to be a Martyr, in which students learn about the struggles a would-be suicide bomber must deal with before ripping himself and the innocents around him to shreds. So again, it's sympathizing with Palestinian suicide bombers, and it teaches your kids the glory of martyrdom. Again, the public broadcasting service PBS is home to Big Bird, Frontline, and other programming made possible by viewers like you, including lesson plans instructing teachers how to show kids to be more sympathetic to radical Islamic suicide bombers in Palestine. They literally call it dying to be a martyr. Now, this ties into what happened yesterday in Fresno. Of course, we had the triple murder of 3 people happen yesterday morning. The culprit, Corey Ali Muhammad, reports the LA Times in the headline, hate crime is suspected after a gunman kills 3 white men in downtown Fresno. Corey Ali Muhammad told his family there was a war going on between blacks and whites in America. This was clearly racially motivated, but more than that. And they're not admitting this. We're going to play this video shortly where he openly talks about taking vengeance upon America. A clear political dimension, a clear political motivation behind this shooting. They're saying it's not terrorism. The LA Times goes on to report on social media he referred to white people as devils. Earlier in the year, he released a rap album replete with violent, explicit, racially charged lyrics, including one referring to himself as a black soldier. So after he shot these 3 people dead, random white people on the streets of Fresno, he shouted Allah Akbar while being arrested by police officers. He also expressed resentment, hatred towards white people and the government, according to Fresno Police Chief Jerry Dyer. So this was all admitted within an hour of this shooting happening, that it was driven by his hatred towards white people. He said Allah Akbar after the attack while he was being arrested. Clear racial dimension, clear political motivation. Then we dug into his actual Facebook page, which was live for about 2 hours after the shooting, before it started picking up media attention. There you see one post out of his Facebook calling Steve Bannon a white devil. There's also another post in there where he expresses hatred towards Trump and Pence, so clearly driven, radicalized by the mainstream media's hysterical anti-Trump rhetoric. He was their creation. Then we went on who he liked on Facebook. Obviously, you can look at the media organizations that people follow. And it was CNN, MSNBC, Young Turks, a whole host of Black Lives Matter groups, people like Van Jones, people like Sean King, the BLM icon, and a bunch of basically social justice warrior groups. So again, every time there's a shooting, every time there's an incident, Pizzagate, you can look at Richard Poplawski in Seattle back in 2009. Any connection, if they browsed InfoWars once, we immediately get labeled with the blame. Even though in the case of Poplawski in Seattle, he gunned down some police officers back in 2009. He openly said he didn't even like Alex Jones, yet we still got blamed for that attack. Well, it cuts both ways. This guy was a radicalized, militant, social justice warrior. And when that narrative started to emerge on Twitter in the hours after the shooting, there was a huge backlash from his fellow social justice warriors, which goes back to the point that I make over and over again. The right disavows its fringe extremists. No one's denying that there are fringe extremists who commit violence on the right. The difference is we disavow them. We don't encourage their rhetoric. We don't march down the street chanting, what do we want? Dead cops, when do we want it now? Like Black Lives Matter protesters do. We don't go on Twitter and hashtag kill all black people, but they do it, kill all white people. We've seen the hashtags. We've seen this constant drumbeat of trying to make anti-white racism trendy and cool. Huffington Post just a few days ago had an article, should we ban white people from voting? Because that's progressive now. We've had MTV, resolutions for white people, a backlash to that, but they still carry on with this intense radicalization agenda, trying to make it cool and trendy. Does that mean that the people who view those videos or read those articles are going to go out and kill white people? No. But again, we get blamed for every single attack if there's a thread of connection, if they browsed InfoWars once. There you see the Huffington Post. Could it be time to deny white men the franchise, the right to vote? We've documented this at every single stage. You had an MTV show last year with white people crying over their guilt with the close-up on their distraught faces. The left, the progressives, the social justice warriors have created this meme, and now there's a backlash in the form of dead victims on the streets of Fresno. Again, we've seen the constant reinforcement of the argument. You know, you've heard it. White people can't be racist because they've got institutional power. White people, you know, this guy was racist for screaming about how he hated white people while gunning them down in broad daylight. But it's not political. It's not even a hate crime, some of them were saying. I got absolutely trashed on Twitter by a lot of these leftists simply for pointing out these connections. I'll give you an example. And if you go on my Twitter page, you can see all this from yesterday. Charles Clymer tweeted, "If your fragile white feelings are what's being slaughtered, that doesn't qualify as a terrorist attack. Sorry, kiddo, try again." So his concern wasn't for the victims. His concern was people were saying it was a terrorist attack when it clearly was. Let's roll the video where this guy talks about taking vengeance against America. Let's go to that clip.
Hi, it's your boy B God Muhammad. Apparently, y'all racists grab the white devils and you coons and fuck niggas not taking this serious. We will continue to bring destruction and wrath upon America until we establish a kingdom of infinite peace and progress. That's what we're doing. All this going to cease. We have greater works to do. Assalamu alaikum, halanahi. Assalamu alaikum. Allahu Akbar.
So there you have it. He's talking about vengeance. He's saying Allahu Akbar. This is clearly political. You go on his Facebook page, you look at his posts before they deleted them. Black militant groups, you know, the kind that march down the street with rifles chanting for dead cops like BLM did in New York. But again, we have this narrative. It's impossible for, you know, black people to be racist against white people because white people have institutional power. Was this guy racist for screaming about how he hated white people while gunning them down in the street in broad daylight? Well, of course, that's a racist hate crime. But they won't even acknowledge that, a lot of them. He followed, you know, BLM leader Shaun King. He was clearly radicalized by some of this rhetoric. And yet, people on Twitter wouldn't have it because it crushed that narrative. How is CNN, how is BuzzFeed going to defend this narrative when this guy has clearly been radicalized? He's been turned to this fringe, violent, extreme action by their rhetoric that we've seen over and over again. The anti-Trump stuff, the hysteria, the Trump derangement syndrome. But, you know, people are up on Twitter claiming that this issue was trending in Fresno, not because it was a multiple victim shooting, because it was a huge breaking story, but because bots were pushing it to the top of Twitter trending. Again, any narrative that goes against them, any narrative that they can't defend with their insane, hysterical rhetoric, they claim that it's bots. And then this whole terrorism angle. Every time there's a mass shooting, every time there's even a limited shooting, you know, one or two victims, and a white perpetrator, what does the left do? They get up on Twitter, they demand it be characterized as a terrorist attack. With no information coming in whatsoever. Who's the culprit? He's white, it's a terrorist attack. And yes, there are terrorist attacks. Dylan Roof, racist, hate crime, obviously politically motivated. Yes, it was a terrorist attack. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's not blame trucks like CNN and the New York Times did after the Nice incident. Let's blame the actual perpetrator and look into the motivations behind it, which was publicly available within 2 hours after this attack before they pulled it down. But it was the narrative of, you know, the usual alt-right accounts are spreading disinfo about this. That's what I got on Twitter. How is it disinfo to point out the guy's Facebook post where he's calling people white devils, where he's posting anti-Trump stuff, where he follows all these militant liberation groups where he supports Black Lives Matter. Clearly, he was motivated by that. He was talking about it in the clip. He was screaming Allah Akbar after he committed this triple murder. But what did the Associated Press report in the immediate aftermath of this? Fake news. AP translates killer's Allah Akbar to English, claims he said God is great. This is out of the American Mirror. And they actually tweeted, and now they've deleted it, that this guy said God is great after he committed this triple murder. The police, hours before, had gone on record to say that he had said Allah Akbar, but the Associated Press just decided to translate that to help people understand things, and it became God is great. Well, obviously, the reason for them doing that is to disguise the fact that he's invoking a Muslim God, to disguise the fact that that's obviously what terrorists say before every single major terrorist attack. A very inconvenient narrative for the mainstream media, and they tried to flip it round, but they completely failed. But again, the far left is merging with Islamist rhetoric, and now it's spilling out onto the streets. We'll be back with the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. Stay tuned. We are back live on the Alex Jones Show, and the question we're asking is, is the mainstream media's violent racist rhetoric inspiring domestic terrorists to kill people? We had this tragic incident in Fresno yesterday. The guy was obviously motivated by this anti-Trump hysteria, this Black Lives Matter rhetoric. He called the guy who shot the cops in Dallas, who again was inspired by this anti-white hatred, he called him a hero on his own Facebook page. Has he been radicalized by this far-left propaganda? Will they disavow? He had the same rhetoric as an SJW combined a little bit with an Islamist. This is the toxic combination I've been warning about. There you see his Facebook page, our hero. There's the guy who gunned down 8-9 cops in Dallas last summer. You crawl through his entire Facebook page, it's a one long litany of social justice hysteria. The far left is merging with Islamism, and we need to call it out for what it is, because this is going to cause more violent episodes. Again, I'm not saying that they're all going to fly off to Syria and fight for ISIS, obviously not. But this is going to cause more deaths. I put out a tweet months ago warning that this Trump derangement syndrome, there you see Black Lives Matter supporters celebrating the murder of the Dallas cops back in July last year. But I put out a tweet months ago warning these social justice warriors are going to go jihad. And this shooting in Fresno was this Corey Muhammad's own personal jihad. But what were the left concerned about in the immediate aftermath? Here's another tweet directed at me by a social justice warrior after this incident. Oh, look, Cernovich, Posebek, and Watson are all pushing the exact same narrative about Fresno, all at the same time. Imagine that. Well, yeah, we were covering a breaking news story about a multiple victim shooting and stating the known facts. Imagine that. God forbid. They were so afraid of us even talking about it because, again, it looked really bad for their narrative. It's very hard to spin something like that when a social justice warrior, militant, leftist, Black Lives Matter supporting anti-Trump extremist who shouted Allah Akbar, who was also an Islamist, guns down 3 people randomly on the streets in the broad daylight. Very hard to spin that narrative and turn it back on the right. Again, the right disavows its fringe extremists. The left only ever encourages them. And that came to light again in what happened tragically in Fresno yesterday. But we have some breaking news out of the New Yorker, and this was probably, many people foresaw it. Sources, Fox News has decided Bill O'Reilly has to go. The Murdochs have decided Bill O'Reilly's 21-year run at Fox News will come to an end, according to sources briefed on the discussions. Network executives are preparing to announce O'Reilly's departure before he returns from his vacation on April 24th. Now, the big question, or how the exit will look and who will replace him. Obviously, they just got Tucker Carlson into one of those primetime slots after the departure of Megyn Kelly. But I think we all saw that coming. He was basically drummed out, not to excuse his behavior. He's obviously the accusations, some of them have been proven true. But it was a witch hunt by the left to get him out of there. 4 million viewers on a nightly basis on a good night. you know, they've been trying to get him out for a while. And there's another article out of American Mirror, which ties into this. Email shows Media Matters orchestrating Bill O'Reilly's smear campaign. Again, Media Matters, the group that used to meet on a weekly basis with Barack Obama to coordinate their agenda. They used to brag about how they wrote the editorials for MSNBC every single day. Media Matters, the group that attacks us on a daily basis. They've got people listening right now to every single word, busily transcribing everything so they can spin it out of context and attack us again. They used to write butthurt articles whining about how Matt Drudge linked to us like 4 years ago, which was pretty funny because I told Matt Drudge about that. And because of it, he said he would link to us 5 times more. So thank you very much, Media Matters. After every single attack, we get bigger and bigger. But as that article explains, they directly targeted his advertisers. And that's what the left does. They can't compete on a level playing field. They can't win the argument in a fair fight. So they always dig for the personal, for the private. They always attack on a financial assault course because, again, they don't have an argument. They use the rights principles against them. They make it personal. They go after people's private lives because they can't compete. They can't resonate when it comes to having an actual argument. And we've seen that happen again with Bill O'Reilly, who it now looks like is hanging on by a thread or is about to leave Fox News. We will be back with more news on The Alex Jones Show Live. Breaking news at Infowars.com. Don't go away. We're live on The Alex Jones Show. Going to dip back into the news. Another example of fake news as it relates to Donald Trump in a second. But first, I want to tell you about the amazing specials that we've extended at InfoWarsStore.com again. Talking about Media Matters, who attack us on a daily basis. That's just one of them. We're under constant assault. We need your support, and we've extended the Easter mega specials for one final time. This is the last opportunity to take advantage of these huge discounts. We have 30% off Brain Force. Again, one of the cutting-edge nootropics that we've developed here, which I take. I vehemently recommend that other people take it. 30% off to give you that mental clarity, to give you that boost without the junky feeling that you get from something like coffee. It is Brain Force. It is the neural activator. It is 30% off with the Easter Mega Special, which ends tonight at InfoWarsStore.com. This is the last opportunity. From Facebook censorship to attacks on our funding sources. And you've seen them. We've talked about them. YouTube demonetization, ad roll. InfoWars is under an unprecedented globalist siege on all fronts, but it's thanks to you that we've survived and thrived in these difficult times. Huge discounts. Vitamin B12 still 25% off. Super Female Vitality 25% off. Survival Shield X2. We have one of the 5-star independent reviews right here about Super Male Vitality. Amazing stuff. Wish I'd found it sooner, says Christian, who left this independent review on the website. 5 stars. I love this product. I feel great as soon as I take it. I've been working out 6 times a week since I got it. Feels strong, gives me energy. I tell everyone about it. People have been asking me what I have been doing. I can see the results already. That is Christian talking about Super Male Vitality, 5-star independent review on InfoWarsStore.com. I'm getting requests from everyone every time I come over here to bring them back, all these great products. They're going over really well in Britain as well, but it's not as easy to get them there, of course. But it is easy to get them right now at InfoWarsStore.com with all those huge Easter mega special discounts extended. But that sale must end tonight. So don't wait around because those discounts are not going to be around for much longer at InfoWarsStore.com. Now, we got Roger Stone hopefully coming up later in this hour to talk about all things Trump. For the moment, we're going to dip back into the news. And speaking of Trump and speaking of fake news, we had AP tweeting that the killer in Fresno said, God is great. He didn't say God is great. He said Allah Akbar, but that's not convenient for their narrative. So they just changed his words entirely. Fake news. Now we have this out of Information Liberation. Media claim Trump threw kid's hat into crowd after signing it. Video shows otherwise. Dozens of news outlets ran with a misleading video spread by Politico on Monday to claim President Trump signed a kid's MAGA hat and threw it callously into a crowd. From the Free Beacon, quote, A kid asked Trump to sign his hat at the White House Easter egg roll. The president signs and then tosses the hat into the crowd. That's what Politico tweeted. And that's what dozens of other media outlets tweeted. It went viral. Here you see Trump signing the hat. Kid gives him the hat, he signs it. In a second, tosses it up into the air. How callous! How callous of Trump. He does it again later on. But if you look at the other angle, if you go to the second video, you can see the kid in the back reaching over, gives Trump the hat. You'll see it in a second, tosses it up. Kid catches it, same one who gave him the hat, and then he walks off. So he wasn't callously tossing it into the crowd as if he didn't care who received it. But dozens of them reported that that was the case, not even showing the video from the other angle. So again, BuzzFeed claimed in a tweet that the poor kid ended up, quote, without a hat. He just got the hat. You could see it in the video. Google News showed dozens of other outlets who ran with the video without any skepticism, and the majority have yet to issue any corrections. And these are the fact checkers that are going to verify all our Facebook posts. These are the guys. BuzzFeed News. Guy without a hat after Trump throws it. Well, he's not without a hat because he threw it directly to him, as you just saw in the video. This is fake news. This is BuzzFeed. This is Politico. These are the people fact-checking our Facebook posts, and they can't even get a basic damn thing right like this. Absolutely incredible. Talking about fake news. And actually, this is good from BuzzFeed. They did one good thing. They reported the truth. A broken clock is right twice a day, I guess. BuzzFeed reports people are saying that Chelsea Clinton is never going to happen after she was honored by this magazine. So Variety came out with this cover, Power of Women, New York. And it featured Chelsea Clinton on the cover. Yes, they're still trying to ram the Clintons down the throats of the American people. They tried to make her look cool. An editor from Variety, speaking about that picture right there, tweeted, how cool does Chelsea Clinton look on our Power of Women New York cover? Well, people responded, yeah, not so cool. Some of the responses, an empire in total decline can sell unaccomplished nepotism as cool to its people. Another person said, hey, fellow youths, doesn't this hip young go-getter especially look snazzy in her leather jacket? Another individual responded, what precisely has this woman accomplished ever? And again, fake news. They're trying to push Chelsea Clinton as this fresh, young, hip face, and it just isn't working. We've talked about this over and over again. When is the left going to have an actual moment of self-reflection and realize that Hillary Clinton, that the Clinton royal family is done? Yeah, people had their own versions of this. It got memed pretty quickly. But again, it's this entire idea of the left forcing you what to think about an image, where they have to say, you must think this about this image. Isn't this cool? This is really cool, isn't it? How dare you say it's not cool? Well, people are saying it's not cool. You're not going to force a tired, defunct legacy like that of the Clintons down the American people's throats again and again and again. It's done. Get over it. Move on. And even BuzzFeed admits it. I mean, come on. If BuzzFeed is calling you out, then you probably got it wrong. Absolutely insane. Because we had the Facebook killer yesterday, committed suicide. It took them a couple of days to find him. He escaped Cleveland, eventually committed suicide in Erie, Pennsylvania. Again, this is out of Information Liberation. McDonald's employees helped catch Facebook killer with deliberately slow service. He was going through the drive-thru at a McDonald's in Erie, Pennsylvania, got his chicken McNuggets, because that's important when you're planning, mass murder of people, to get your chicken McNuggets. But they wouldn't give him his large fries, so the employees tried to delay him because they knew it was him. They called the police. He drove off without his fries, but basically immediately turned the corner. The police were on his tail. And he committed suicide. Again, absolutely chilling video. We can only be thankful that he didn't follow through on his promise and kill more innocent people. Again, we don't know the motivations behind that, so that will continue to develop. Now, of course, Theresa May, over in the UK, yesterday announced that there would be a new general election. in about 50 days' time, a snap election, bearing in mind we only just had a general election in the UK in 2015. Now people are concerned that this could mean sabotage for Brexit. We have this headline out of Breitbart: Britain's general election a ploy to stop hard Brexit, by Raheem Kassam, who's in UKIP and he knows where he speaks. What this means for the Brexit process is concerning to some. Mrs. May was not on the Leave side in the referendum, and that's what people have to remember. She's tried to say she's going to take the middle ground between nationalism and globalism. You know, she said she supports Sharia law in the past, and she was pro-Remain. Theresa May was pro-Remain. She didn't campaign for it heavily, but she was pro-Remain. Now we have concern that she will use this general election as basically a rubber stamp to follow through on Brexit the way she wants it, not the way the British people voted for it. We want a hard Brexit. That's what we voted for, but she's going to use this, according to Raheem Kassam. The concern is to push a soft Brexit because she can claim that she now owns the process. Whereas before, you know, it was Boris Johnson, it was Michael Gove, it was the people in the Leave campaign that tailored that entire campaign, and they wanted a hard Brexit. Now, if Theresa May gets this mandate from the British people, and she probably will win in a landslide, that's almost inevitable, because the opposition parties are so fundamentally broken and terrible and far left and socialist, then she could amass the political capital to say, well, this is how we're going to do Brexit. You voted me in to do it, so I'm going to do it my way. The problem with that is that she could follow through on a, quote, soft Brexit, and in fact, that's what EU sources are now saying, according to this article. Quote, Europe believes if she wins, there will be a softer Brexit. Whether she will make that a soft or hard Brexit, I don't know, but she'll say, I'm in charge and go her way. That's the key. She'll say she has the mandate to follow through on a soft Brexit. What is a soft Brexit? Well, it's allowing 300,000 people to emigrate to the UK every single year, which is the current situation. 300,000 people net, after the ones who have left have been accounted for, come into the United Kingdom every single year. It's a tiny island nation, 60 million population. It's overflowing. It's absolutely overpopulated. Public services are collapsing. We have government healthcare, which is basically failing. To get a doctor's appointment, you have to basically be at death's door or pretend you're at death's door to enter the lottery to get an appointment for government healthcare. And it's because we've taken in far too many low-skilled immigrants, and it's putting a huge strain on the system. That is partly what people voted for, the 52% with Brexit. They want that 300,000 net immigration figure addressed and reduced. That is a hard Brexit, but Theresa May is now making noises that she won't follow through on that if she gets the political capital from this UK general election that's coming up in around 50 days' time. Meanwhile, over in France, in fact, let's go to that video now because we need to play this. This is the truth about the French election. It happens on Sunday, the first round. This is absolutely critical for the future of globalism versus nationalism in Europe. Let's go to the clip. The French election is absolutely chaotic, with the polls showing no clear winner as the first round of voting approaches. In the Brexit spirit, Marine Le Pen has framed the contest as the next epic struggle between globalism and nationalism. 39% of young people aged 18 to 24 support Marine Le Pen, almost double the number of her closest rival, Emmanuel Macron. 39%, which proves what I've been saying all along. Populism is the new punk. All the energy is behind Le Pen. The French are sick and tired of their country being stuck in the malaise of anemic economic growth, high taxes and high unemployment. Sick of being told to accept another ominous form of occupation, this time under the guise of Islamo-fascism. France has suffered 20 Islamist attacks since Charlie Hebdo. 33% of Muslim students support terrorism. But don't you dare question whether it's normal for some classrooms in France to be 91% Muslim, or you'll be fined. Le Pen also has huge support amongst women, many of whom have observed the epidemic of sexual assault sweeping Europe and don't feel safe. So how is the establishment trying to stop this populist uprising? By creating a fake populist in the form of Emmanuel Macron, the French Tony Blair. Because nothing says populist like a former Rothschild banker who's never been elected to anything in his entire life. This guy's entire campaign was literally cooked up years ago by Francois Hollande, the outgoing socialist who's so unpopular he's not even bothering to run as a candidate. Macron is the Hollande mini-me. Hollande has already anointed him as his successor and will campaign for him if he reaches round 2. Now all the corporate money and state media endorsements are flooding Macron's way. Populist my ass. His entire campaign was created in a lab by the very same establishment the French are trying to get rid of. He also married his school teacher, who is 25 years older than him. And that's just weird. How's Macron going to stop Islamic terrorism? By curbing Islamic immigration? No. By spying on French people's Skype calls. No thanks. So who else is there? Jean-Luc Mélenchon, a far-left communist sympathizer known as the French Hugo Chavez. Because Venezuela's doing so well, isn't it? Yeah, the French are known for their haute cuisine. And I don't think they fancy the idea of searching through the garbage for food. I don't think they'd like the idea of flamingo being on the menu. But then again, they are French, so don't quote me on that. Mélenchon wants to reduce legal working hours from 35 hours a week to 32 hours a week. Because a 3-hour lunch break just isn't long enough. Because 24% youth unemployment just isn't high enough. Let's create more incentives for businesses to leave France. Great idea. He starred in a video game in which he shakes down people on the street, steals their money, and puts it in a common pot. Yeah, the world tried communism, and it kinda didn't work out for us. Reference: the entire 20th century. Or the French could default to Fillon, the scandal-ridden conservative, which would be like putting a Band-Aid over a gaping wound. Fillon waffles on about Islamic terrorism, yet has no actual solutions to prevent it. The time has clearly arrived for Le Pen.
Car votre Union européenne est en train de s'effondrer. Je porte un autre modèle qui rassemble aujourd'hui les peuples d'Europe. Celui de l'indépendance, de l'Europe des nations dans un monde multipolaire, du protectionnisme intelligent, eh oui, des libertés individuelles, de la défense de notre sécurité et de nos identités par l'arrêt total de l'immigration de masse.
61% of French people support halting Islamic immigration altogether. Populism is still clearly in the ascendancy. The anti-immigration Sweden Democrats just became the most popular party in Sweden. Yes, Sweden.
Sweden!
So, as ever, the establishment is up to its old tricks. Facebook just deleted 30,000 of the most popular accounts in France, a month after they vowed to educate the French people and stop fake news. And Google is once again manipulating its algorithm in a bid to sway undecided voters. Can Marine Le Pen be victorious? Yes, but she has to win the first round. That's how she builds momentum. Hollande is now privately panicking and trying to get out of handing over power at the ceremony because he fears Le Pen will win. Out of all the candidates, Le Pen also has the most solid support when it comes to people who will definitely vote for her. The spirit of Charles de Gaulle has infused Le Pen's campaign. You also have a Trump-style phenomenon where people in the rural areas feel left behind and abandoned. This isn't left versus right. This is Brexit all over again. This is the people versus the establishment. And that's why the establishment is terrified of President Marine Le Pen.
Vive la République! Vive la France!
Huge election coming up Sunday, but we will be back in the next segment with more breaking news. Infowars.com. Don't go away. We're live on the Alex Jones Show. As we were hearing before the break, absolutely huge election coming up in France. Round 1 is on Sunday. Marine Le Pen has to win round 1. She could come second and go through to the second round, but that's not going to give her the momentum she needs to claim victory. Of course, the entire establishment is saying she's got no chance. People are going to rail against her in the second round when it counts. We heard Similar statements before Brexit. We heard similar statements before the US presidential election, and look what happened. Now, Reuters is reporting on this very same subject. Le Pen's FN party calls EU flag oligarchic rag. France's far-right National Front stepped up its anti-European Union rhetoric on Wednesday, days after toughening its stand against immigration in an apparent bid to mobilize its core supporters ahead of Sunday's presidential election. Opinion polls have for months predicted that Marine Le Pen would attract enough votes to make it to the two-way runoff, but again, she has to win the first round. Now her rhetoric has sharpened. She said, quote, "You'll see, we'll soon stuff your oligarchic rag in the cupboard." That's what her second-in-command Florian Philippot said of the EU flag in a message on Twitter. He was reacting to the European Commission's representative office in France, which posted on Twitter, "Proud of our flag. Symbol of unity, solidarity, and harmony between the peoples of Europe. Let's not hide it." Nobody gives a damn about that flag. They've tried to create this phony, false sense of patriotism behind the EU, an unelected bureaucratic body that is completely unrepresentative of the people of the EU. Nobody even knows who they are. They've done videos where they go out right outside the European Parliament, right outside European institutions. Who's the president of the EU Commission? Nobody knows. Nobody knows who these people are. Yet they tried to create a currency. They tried to create a flag to rally people behind it because they know that patriotism resonates, but you can't create it out of thin air. It's based on history. It's based on identity. It's based on shared values. The EU has absolutely none of that. They've tried to create this false gestalt entity of phony patriotism. It never worked, but now they're out saying we're proud of our flag. Marine Le Pen says she's going to stick that rag in the cupboard. And she's got, again, as you saw in the video, 39% of young people in France are behind Marine Le Pen. Double those who are behind this fake populist that they created in a lab in the Élysée Palace in Paris, France, Emmanuel Macron. He's literally the brainchild of the outgoing, incredibly unpopular socialist president, Francois Hollande. Yet again, they tried to brand him as a populist. He's a former Rothschild banker, for crying out loud. You're not going to brand someone like that as a populist. The French people are starting to figure it all out. And now Macron, there on the left, his poll numbers are going down. The problem is this far-left communist, Mélenchon, this French Hugo Chavez, because Venezuela's gone so well, hasn't it? He's now rising to prominence. He's about equal with both Le Pen and Macron in the polls. So we'll see what happens in France. But again, she has to win the first round. It's a two-round contest. First round, 23rd of April, this Sunday. Second round, 7th of May. If Marine Le Pen wins, people have said, prominent people, that the EU is completely finished, that it's over, because she will call for a Frexit, a French EU referendum. They will abandon the EU, then it rests on only one pillar of Germany, and that its eventual collapse is inevitable. So huge, high stakes riding on that French election this Sunday, and we'll be covering it here at Infowars.com. Stay tuned, though. We got more breaking news. We've got North Korea, and we have Roger Stone in studio. This is the Alex Jones Show Live. Breaking news, Infowars.com. Stay right there.